Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. I've long been of two minds about capitalism versus socialism, and not surprisingly, have ended up a mushy moderate. At the end of this little talk, I'm going to flesh that out a bit for you, but first, here are what I believe are some trenchant pro-capitalist quotes and some anti-capitalist quotes and some that are mixed. First, the pro-capitalist ones. This comes from David Horowitz, a former lefty who is now the head of something called heterodox. In practice, socialism didn't work, but socialism could never have worked because it's based on false premises about human psychology and society, and gross ignorance of the human economy. In the vast library of socialist theory, and in all of Marx's compendious works, there's hardly a chapter devoted to the creation of wealth, to what will cause human beings to work and to innovate, or what will make their efforts efficient. Socialism is a plan of morally sanctioned theft. It's about dividing up what others have created. Consequently, socialist economies don't work. They create poverty instead of wealth. This is unarguable historical fact now, but that has not prompted the left to have second thoughts. Okay. Next quote from Ayn Rand, famous author of Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. America's abundance was created not by public sacrifices to the, quote, common good, but by the productive genius of free men and women who pursued their own personal interests and the making of their own private fortunes. They did not starve the people to pay for America's industrialization. They gave the people better jobs, higher wages, and cheaper goods with every new machine they invented, with every scientific discovery or technological advance, and thus the whole country was moving forward and profiting, not suffering, every step of the way. The next quote is from famous economist Milton Friedman. Is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty we're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they've had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that, so that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by the free enterprise system. Next quote is from Rand Paul, and these again, I'm in the middle of the pro-capitalism quotes. The great and abiding lesson of American history, particularly the Cold War, is that the engine of capitalism, the individual, is mightier than any collective. The next one comes from Mark J. Perry. I don't remember who that is. As we've learned from countless examples throughout history, including now Venezuela, the main difference between capitalism and socialism is capitalism works. This from Ben Shapiro. The story of Detroit's bankruptcy was simple enough. Allow capitalism to grow the city, campaign against income inequality, tax the job creators until they flee, increase government spending in order to boost employment, promise generous pension plans to keep people voting for failure, rinse, wash, repeat. This from Trish Regan. Capitalism, for the record, has lifted more people out of poverty than any other economic system in the world. This from feminist and lesbian. She likes to identify that. I wouldn't normally do it, but she does like to be so identified. Her name, Camille Paglia. She writes, capitalism has its weaknesses, but it is capitalism that ended the stranglehold of the hereditary aristocracies, raised the standard of living for most of the world, and enabled the emancipation of women. This from somebody named Manmohan Singh. Don't know who he is either. Didn't look it up. I'm just going to read it, but I like the quote. Capitalism historically has been a very dynamic force, and behind that force is technological progress, innovation, new ideas, new products, new technologies, and new methods of managing teams. And finally, from Harvard's Steven Pinker, Capitalism is a dirty word for many intellectuals, but there are a number of studies showing that open economies and free trade are negatively correlated with genocide and war. Now, a roughly equal amount of words in anti-capitalist, pro-socialist. This first one is from Martin Luther King. With this system, capitalism, a small privileged few are rich beyond conscience, and almost all others are doomed to be poor at some level. That's the way the system works, and since we know that the system will not change the rules, we are going to have to change the system. The next quote comes from Michael Moore, filmmaker Michael Moore. Capitalism is an organized system to guarantee that greed becomes the primary force in our economic system and allows the few at the top to get very wealthy, and as the rest of us, riding around thinking we can be that way too. If we just work hard enough, sell enough Tupperware and Amway products, we can get a pink Cadillac. Next one comes from a famous leftist economist and social commentator, Noam Chomsky. If you ask the CEO of some major corporation what he does, he will say in all honesty that he is slaving 20 hours a day to provide his customers with the best goods or services he can, and creating the best possible working conditions for his employees. But then you take a look at what the corporation does, the effect of its legal structure, the vast inequalities in pay and conditions, and you see the reality is something far different. Next quote comes from Helen Keller. The country is governed for the richest, for the corporations, the bankers, the land speculators, and for the exploiters of labor. The majority of mankind are working people. So long as their fair demands, the ownership and control of their livelihoods, are set at naught, we can have neither men's rights nor women's rights. The majority of mankind is ground down by industrial oppression in order that a small remnant may live in ease. This next one is from Michael Parenti. The essence of capitalism is to turn nature into commodities and commodities into capital. The live green earth is transformed into dead gold bricks, with luxury items for the few and toxic slag heaps for the many. The glittering mansion overlooks a vast sprawl of shantytowns, wherein a desperate, demoralized humanity is kept in line with drugs, television, and armed force. The next quote, the anti-capitalist quote, comes from the famous economist John Maynard Keynes. The decadent, international, but individualistic capitalism in the hands from which we have found ourselves after the war is not a success. It is not intelligent. It is not beautiful. It is not just. It is not virtuous, and it doesn't deliver the goods. The next from somebody named John Hillcoat. It's the aspirations that capitalism is promoting as beautiful, positive attributes that are dangerous. All that is in the bedrooms of the poor and in the villages of the third world, and it's like a cruel carrot that's being waved in front of people's noses. It's a seduction, an unattainable dream. The next is from journalist Molly Ivins. The trouble with capitalism as a system is that only those who have or can get capital can make it work for them, and that leaves out damn near all of us. Next is from somebody named Lil B. I don't know who that is. My perspective of capitalism growing up in Berkeley, California, in a low-income project growing up poor, is that capitalism wanted to destroy me. They wanted me to be a worker. The next two come from Confucius. The master said, if your conduct is determined solely by considerations of profit, you will arouse great resentment. And then he also said, the superior man understands what is right. The inferior man understands what will sell. This from Lech Walesa, the Czech president, somebody who by acclamation, he didn't want to be the president of Czechoslovakia, but the public demanded that he be. And here is his anti-capitalist quote. Capitalism is working to produce more money, but does not see the people. This problem is getting worse across the world. Another quote from Michael Moore. Capitalism is an evil, and you cannot regulate evil. You have to eliminate it and replace it with something that is good for all people, and that something is democracy. And finally, from somebody named Sylvia Pankhurst, I am going to fight capitalism even if it kills me. It is wrong that people like you should be comfortable and well-fed while all around you people are starving. And finally, a set of mixed views that aren't clearly pro-capitalist or anti, but have more nuance. This from Yuval Noah Harari, who I think wrote the book Sapiens and another highly regarded book. Most previous ethical systems presented people with a pretty tough deal. They were promised paradise, but only if they cultivated compassion and tolerance, overcame craving and anger, and restrained their selfish interests. This was too tough for most. The history of ethics is a sad tale of wonderful ideals that no one can live up to. Most Christians did not imitate Christ. Most Buddhists failed to follow Buddha, and most Confucians would have caused Confucius a temper tantrum. In contrast, most people today successfully live up to the capitalist consumerist ideal. The new ethic promises paradise on condition that the rich remain greedy and spend their time making more money, and that the masses give free rein to their cravings and passions and buy more and more. Next quote comes from former Congressman, liberal Republican Paul Ryan. I call crony capitalism, where you take money from successful small businesses, spend it in Washington on favored industries or on favored individuals, picking winners and losers in the economy. That's not pro-growth economics. That's not entrepreneurial economics. That's not helping small businesses. That's cronyism. That's corporate welfare. This from somebody named Simon Manwaring. Today's consumers are eager to become loyal fans of companies that respect purposeful capitalism. They're not opposed to companies making a profit. Indeed, they may even be investors in these companies. But at the core, they want more empathic, enlightened corporations that seek a balance between profit and purpose. This next one from Richard J. Roberts. One always had to worry when capitalism had a role in healthcare. If you're just using healthcare to make money, you will treat the wrong diseases. Capitalism has its limits. There is a role for governments, and this is one where they should be involved. This from John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods. Operating under the conscious capitalism model will show that businesses are the true value creators that can push all of humanity upward for continuous improvement. This from a guy who's quite a leftist, but this particular comment is a more restrained, moderate position. He says, some argue shareholder capitalism has proven more efficient. It has moved economic resources to where they're most productive and thereby enabled the economy to grow faster. And finally, I want to share my position. As I've pointed out from these experts who offer these excellent quotes, in my judgment, abundant examples from history prove that to get the necessary broad participation of the public in an economy, incentives have to be offered, and that's the capitalistic. We'll pay you more based on the difficulty, rarity, and quality of what work you do. Now, that promise is not always kept, but it is often, and often enough to make that system work. But some people in a capitalist world will lose in the competition for decent jobs. So if we are humane, we do need progressive taxation to ensure a basic safety net. And I define basic as basic health care, but not as good as that which people who pay into the system would get. Basic housing, like that college students get, but not the so-called low-income housing that's being built in middle-class areas that look darn similar to what people, the homes that people have who paid for their homes. And also there should be a minimal cash allowance to allow for basic food, basic transportation, and so on. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I am interested in what your thoughts are. Feel free to write a comment. In any event, I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I do always welcome your comments, and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.